Hello and welcome back to the Go Karts and Good Times YouTube channel. I'm back after what has been quite the long hiatus, longer than I'd expected, but I did know that I was going to be away for some amount of time. We're almost into the new year now, and I'm finally back to get something done because I got those old Miata videos edited and I'm going to start getting them out. The Miata itself is sitting in the same place it's been for quite a while now, in the garage, kind of tucked away because we're a little bit packed in for winter here. I can still get the car out, but for the most part, this is where it has to stay because there isn't room anywhere else, and I obviously can't leave the car outside. The exciting news for this video is that one of the weekends I was home, I saw that a couple Miatas finally came to my local junkyard, and I was able to get some parts. I got a power plant frame, a drive shaft, a manual transmission, there's that turbo, and a bunch of hardware, as well as the bezels that go around the headlights that really finish up the pop-ups, which I plan to keep. At some point in time, I also mentioned that the front passenger caliper is frozen, so here's a pile of brake parts, which I also grabbed, and a slave cylinder for the transmission. I've mentioned before that I wanted to manual swap the car before I went ahead turboing it or messing with the drivetrain, but as I said in one of the earlier videos, it's all about availability and cost because I want to try and get things done the cheapest and with what's locally available to me. Months and months ago, closer to when I got the car, I was probably able to get a manual swap for $500. I got everything you see here, not the turbo, at least the manual swap parts, for under 200 bucks. All that being said, I did consider starting the manual swap before finishing the turbo, but I have to buy a clutch and get a master cylinder to go along with it. And while the master cylinder is cheap, the clutch isn't, and I like to do as much as possible with what I have currently because this car isn't going to be getting huge amounts of work done until the summer. At the moment though, there are a few things that I can start doing or continue making progress on. This car is still really rusty, so I can start cleaning up or continue cleaning up some of that rust, putting rust preventative coating on it, and getting more of the rough spots cleaned up for when I eventually paint it. I can also start to simplify the wiring loom up under the dash and start putting things back that I want to remain in the car and start thinking about what I'm going to do for a dash panel and for the original gauge cluster, which I intend to run. I want to avoid as much cutting and welding as possible, at least for now, because it's not convenient to work in the other garage where I have 220 and have the best access to tools, but there are still things that I can do that don't involve heavy power tools or fabrication, which would be needed to get the manifold done for the turbo. And while I do want to continue getting the turbo swap done because I do have more parts for that than I do for the manual swap, I do have to be mindful of what's available and that this car isn't going to be set up on jack stands somewhere for a long period of time like a traditional project. I do have a couple weeks before I go back to school, and I would like to get some work done in that time, but I really have to sit down, make a list, and think it out, and start with some small things that will be easy to do in an afternoon or spend a day doing instead of setting up a long-term process. At least sitting inside while the car is rusty, it's not going to get much worse than it already is, and I've taken the steps to put some oil on some rusty spots or spray some rust preventative coating so that it doesn't advance any worse. And the car still works just fine. There are those fans on switch power. I would have liked to have pulled the car out today and taken a good look at it, but I'm losing light here, and I have tomorrow, the day after, where the weather should be nicer and I can make some progress. I don't think I'm going to be doing anything in this video, so I might just leave it here, but this is a good update. Like I said, I'll have to sit down later tonight and really assess things, so I may or may not be back to close out this video, but at least this would stand for a good update and establish where I am with parts and where I am in the process of getting this car closer to my final goal. Before I go, I also wanted to mention that I got a new phone, so I'll be filming on that instead of the Nikon I had to film on, while the other phone developed a shake in the camera. The stabilization would constantly spaz out, and I think that was apparent in some of the last videos I used in it before it got really, really bad to the point where it was unusable and I had to switch. But you'll have to let me know how the image quality looks on the new phone camera.